Welcome to my tour of the game City Skylines. I chose this game for my tour because I've been playing it off and on for around 2 years now and still love every second of gameplay. Cities is not an ordinary computer game. It does take an incredible amount of strategy and planning to be able to build a successful city. If you've never heard of City Skylines, it basically allows you to build and maintain a city that you design. It sounds very simple, but there are hundreds of real-world features that must be managed and planned out. For example, you have to manage the residential, commercial, industrial, and office zoning based on your city's demand, population, and education level. Taxes, police stations, hospitals, schools, bus lines, airports, and even traffic congestion are all examples of services that you must individually manage within your city. What's great about City Skylines is that anyone can play no matter your skill or experience. Many of the settings within the game can be disabled to allow for either easier or a more creative gameplay experience. First, you are going to choose a map to build on. Here you can see all of the map options as well as details regarding what you'll have access to. Natural resources like oil, ore, farming, and forestry are used for more advanced gameplay, but you can also see how much water you'll have access to and what kind of outside connections are available. You can see on this map we would have access to air, train, highway, and boat connections. For the purpose of my tour, I will be demonstrating how to build and maintain a small city with a population of 9,500 and growing. For this particular city build, I have chosen the map Two Rivers, and for the city name, I'm actually going to take inspiration from my cat Clyde and go with Clydesdale. When the game first loads, what I do first is always pause it and take a look at the tile that's loaded. Sometimes you get a different one, so it's nice to see what you have available. Here we have a water source at the top of the map, as well as a highway connection, and even a train connection in the lower left if we wanted that later on. The first site I have chosen provides an excellent beginner's guide for new players. It gives simple and in-depth descriptions of all the main services needed to start out your city. But since the writer is also a cities player, they've provided some helpful tips for each service as well. The main services you will learn about through this site include power, water and sewage, zoning, garbage, and healthcare. This guide will also give you useful tips about each of the buildings you can place in the city to provide each of those services. For example, some of these services can have negative side effects like noise, air, or water pollution, so you need to be careful where certain buildings are placed. All the services that cities has to offer can be quite overwhelming when you're first starting out. So if you read through this guide beforehand, you can have a better idea of where to begin when it's time to start your city. The first section I'm going to build is going to be our low-density residential. This is going to be our houses and suburbs. I'm going to place water pipes along to the water source, where I'll place a water pump as well as a sewage drain. It's important to put your water pump where the water begins and your sewage pump where the water leaves your map. That way you don't end up sucking the sewage into the clean water. We're also going to be placing some wind turbines to get our power started. Wind turbines are easiest for the beginning because they're cheap and they create just enough power to start off your small city. We're going to connect the water pumps as well as our residential area with power lines so that when the houses begin to build, the power will be there for them. The next section of city is going to be our industrial area. This is where most of our citizens are going to find jobs. We're also going to create a commercial area where they can go to purchase goods. Now, the commercial and industrial areas can become quite noisy and actually cause pollution. This can make your citizens sick if they live too close, so I like to keep those areas separate from the residential areas. As you can see, we're going to continue with our power and water services, so that our new buildings will be able to access those as well. Now and then, you should check the vitals of your city to ensure that everything is running smoothly. Using the menu bar on the left-hand side, you can view your power usage, water usage, happiness levels, traffic congestion, and more. It's important to check here for information. Along the bottom menu bar, you'll also see your demand. This is going to let you know how much demand you have for residential, commercial, and industrial. You're also going to be able to check your budget. Here you can adjust how much money you allocate to each service, as well as view your incoming and outgoing expenses. You'll also have the option to purchase loans, as well as increase tax levels for certain areas. As you can see here, we've unlocked our first milestone. Each milestone will unlock different services that we can now begin to implement in our city. I'm going to place a few services in the city now. We'll take a look at the medical clinic. We don't have too many sick patients right now, so we'll leave it. I do want to place a landfill. Unfortunately, landfills do fill up quickly, so they require to be emptied to another facility. But for now, a landfill is okay when you're just starting out. It's really important to stay on top of garbage in your city because once it piles up, it's very difficult to deal with and it really makes your citizens unhappy and sometimes sick. I'm also going to place an elementary school in our city so we can begin to educate our citizens. Educated citizens produce less garbage, are happier, and have better jobs. Here you can see we've unlocked another milestone and unlocked a lot more services as well. A lot of those are more expensive, so we may not use them right away. I'm going to go ahead and increase our power as well. I'll do that by placing a coal power plant. It's not exactly the most efficient, but it'll do. I'm also going to go ahead and place a fire department. As you can see, the red is places that are high risk for fires. The industrial areas are the worst, and at the beginning, I try and place my fire departments in the middle of the city. The second website I've chosen gives an extremely detailed look into the road types that are available in City Skylines. For my city here, I have only used two types of roads because it was easier for the purpose of the video, but there are over 20 different types of roads. They range from 2 to 6 lanes, with or without trees or grass, with bus lanes, and more. The site I have chosen is actually the wiki page for City Skylines and provides quite a lot of information and details regarding the road types. It is very important to start your city off with a good road layout so that it can support the heavier traffic that comes with larger populations. This site displays each of the road types in a table so you can compare their features like cost, size, number of lanes, uses, speed limits, benefits, and more. It also has a lot of important information about building roads, whether you choose straight ones, curved, tunnels, elevated roads, and more. It looks like our city is starting to have a bit of a crime issue. I usually wait until this occurs before I place a police station just because it's not always required. One usually does for the beginning, and I like to place it near the fire department. I'm also going to go ahead and place a few parks and recreational areas. These are going to increase happiness as well as the land value for your citizens' homes. This is going to be beneficial to your city as it's going to increase the number of people who are going to want to live there, as well as increase the level of housing you have. I'm also adding pedestrian paths to our cities. The pedestrians love to walk in city skylines. If there's a path, they'll take that versus driving, which means less traffic. Here we have completed another milestone. Here we have reached Boomtown level. It's unlocked more services for us, as well as some city policies and more highway entrances and exits. We're not going to get into those quite yet. It's also unlocked some other buildings that we won't be using as they're more for natural disasters. If you've noticed, there's a few icons that are now showing up above certain buildings. This means the building has a problem. Currently, the most major problem is that there's not enough workers. If you take a look at our demand, our residential demand is extremely high, which means we just need to zone more residential. The third website I chose is a section of Reddit dedicated to city skylines. Reddit tends to be more of a forum than a website. However, when it comes to playing city skylines, it is extremely helpful. Because anyone can post anything, it can make it difficult to use or sometimes unreliable. But when you're building a city and you come across a problem that you just can't seem to fix, this site can be very useful. For example, say your commercial zones are complaining that they don't have enough goods to sell. It could be because none of your trucks can make deliveries since they're stuck in traffic jams. This is a problem that every cities player has run into at some point because the traffic in this game is just ridiculous. But it also means there's a ton of great recommendations and ways to manage those traffic problems that have actually been used by other players. This site is definitely one of the most beneficial to use as a player because anyone can post on it, so you're most likely not the only one to have that issue and you're bound to find some kind of a solution. It's also really easy to find what you're looking for. There's a search bar in the left corner so that you can find the specific issue you're having. Unfortunately, because the posts aren't exactly monitored, some can have poor grammar and spelling or even be unprofessional, but for the most part, they are good and extremely useful. The fourth website I chose is a guide written about the education services and the effects that different education levels will have on your city. This guide was written by a cities player with first-hand knowledge of the game's education system. As they've written in the guide, it is not just as simple as placing the buildings. The education levels of its citizens will actually affect every single part of your city, from its unemployment rate to even the amount of garbage your citizens produce. It's important to correctly manage your city's education system throughout your entire gameplay, and this guide will provide excellent information and really useful tips. The guide is written quite informally, but I still found it to be extremely helpful. Here you can see I'm demolishing some abandoned buildings. Buildings become abandoned when they have problems that are unresolved. The podcast I have chosen was one that I have recently watched, and as a Cities player, I really enjoyed it. It is an interview with two of the game's developers from the company Colossal Order. In this podcast, they discuss possible new directions for the game and details of their latest add-on, Natural Disasters. The podcast is quite long, but it does provide quite a lot of information, and towards the end there is a Q&A session where players can ask the developers questions. As a beginner to the game, this podcast may seem a little bit over your head, but eventually, once you become a more seasoned city builder, you may have more of an interest in the development of the game. I personally was extremely excited about the new Natural Disasters add-on that is to be released because now you can actually watch your city either survive or get destroyed by half a dozen different disasters. From flooding to earthquakes or tornadoes, it even has meteor strikes. And the best part is that it's optional. If you only want to build and not watch your masterpiece get destroyed, then you can play with the disasters turned off. Or if you want more of a challenge, now you can play with scenarios where you must grow and maintain a city plagued by disasters like tornadoes and sinkholes. Here you can see we've actually had our first citizen die in our city. The citizens of our game will actually live realistic lifespans. They'll be children, young adults, seniors, and eventually pass away. Then there will be the need for death care. Death care will be either by cemetery or incineration. There will be hearses that will go to pick up the body and bring them to the facility to be processed. Now, facilities like cemeteries are much like landfills. They will fill up and eventually need to be emptied into other facilities. Now, it's important to stay on top of your death care so that you can avoid something that's called a death wave. This happens when a large amount of your citizens die in one section of the city at one time. It's difficult to serve them in that situation. The video I have chosen was previously the most viewed City Skylines video on YouTube. It is currently sitting as the second most viewed now, with around 1.6 million views. This video is called Let's Build a Tiered City, and is one of the best examples of how limitless the possibilities are when it comes to designing a city in this game. This particular city was designed for looks, not for functionality. However, it is still a functioning and working city. It just looks really, really cool. What I like about this video is that the player came up with a design for the city beforehand on a piece of paper, which seems strange for a computer game, but I've actually found myself doing the same thing. I do want to warn you, this YouTuber is notorious for rambling on forever about something, so you may get a bit tired of listening to him in the video. I did choose this video though because I think it's the best example of if you can imagine it, then you can create it. I also hope that this video encourages you to be more creative in your future city building endeavors because a city does not always have to be straight lines. Here you can see I will be removing some of the low residential zoning. I'm going to replace that with high density residential so that we can boost our population with some high density apartment buildings. After taking a look at my city's education levels, I've placed a university campus to increase the number of highly educated workers for my office buildings. It also appears our landfill is full, so we're going to empty that to a new facility as well as create a new landfill to handle the extra garbage. I will also be increasing the budget for the landfills so that we can have more garbage trucks to pick up the garbage faster. Here you'll see I'll zone some office space. Office buildings are where highly educated workers go for employment. I'm also going to zone some high density residential, which will bring in apartment buildings to boost our population. High density residential really likes high density commercial, so I've also included some of that in our lower density commercial areas. We have finally reached the milestone of a small city and have a population of over 9,500 citizens. Now, your city may look kind of similar to mine at this point, or it might be completely different, more spread out or on a different map, but overall, this is what it takes to grow and maintain a city in City Skylines. We discussed the main services you need to get your city started and booming, as well as how this game can both be creative and strategic at the same time. I hope that this virtual tour has helped to give you a basic understanding of the game and also inspired you to build a city of your own. Thank you for watching.